If you guys have done any of the Advent Guide stuff this week, I was reading the quote at the beginning for Saturday, and I thought it particularly applied to the passing of the peace time that we actually just did. It says that Christmas means that through the grace of God and the incarnation, peace with God is available. And if you make peace with God, then you can go out and make peace with everyone else. And the more people who embrace the gospel and do that, the better off the world is. Christmas, therefore, means the increase of peace, both with God and between people across the face of the world. So that's a reason that we do pass the peace every week. That's something to remember during Christmas time. And if you haven't been doing the Advent Guide, we're only about halfway through. And so you can pick it up where you're at. And it's just a really great thing for you as an individual, for you as a family. And if you don't have a physical copy, they're available online. So just a quick plug for that, just a quick plug. If I haven't met you before, my name is Andrew Flowers, and I'm one of the pastors here at Midtown Lexington. And that's actually the first time I've actually said that sentence out loud. So that's pretty fun. No, I got ordained a couple months ago. So, but it's really great to be with you guys this morning. Really great to be together in this Advent season. If you have a Bible with you or your phone, you can open it up to Luke chapter 8. That's where we'll be this morning. And we'll get there in a little bit. But the last few weeks during this Advent season, we've been looking at these old hymns, right? These old Christmas hymns that we sing all the time. And we've kind of been digging deep and pulling out the truth of the good news of Jesus that are in these hymns that we sing all the time. And the one that we're going to sing, or we're going to sing it later, but the one that we're going to talk about this morning is Hark, the Herald Angels Sing, which I heard is some people's favorites and some people's least favorites, but that's the one we're going to talk about this morning. I'm actually just going to read the lyrics for us this morning. So it says, Hark, the herald angels sing, glory to the newborn King, peace on earth, mercy mild, God and sinners reconciled. Joyful, all ye nations rise, join the triumph of the skies. With the angelic host proclaim, Christ is born in Bethlehem. And it says, hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness, light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. Mild he lays his glory by, born that man no more may die, born to raise the sons of earth, born to give them second birth. Now, if you know me and you've been around, it's like you didn't sing the lines. And it's like, yeah, I'm not going to sing the lines this morning. I'm going to preach this morning. I'm not going to sing them. So they'll sing them later. This hymn was written by a guy named Charles Wesley around 1730s. And if you're not familiar with the name Charles Wesley, he's one of the guys that started the Methodist movement. I grew up in the Methodist movement, so I heard the name Charles Wesley all the time. But he actually wrote 6,500 hymns, 6,500 hymms in his lifetime. That's a lot of words. That's a lot of hymns. And there's a Spotify rap joke in there somewhere, but I'm not quite sure where. About 150 years later, an Anglican priest named James King, he looked at hymnals from around the world, so different languages, different cultures, and there were 4 hymns in every hymnal around the world at that time, and this was one of those 4, Hark the Herald Angels Sing. And around that same time, in the late 1800s, a Christmas Eve service was started in England. It's called the 9 Lessons and Carols. It's actually something that we build our Christmas gatherings around and kind of following along this tradition. But they play this hymn last every time. This is the hymn that sends everybody out. And as any good musician knows, you play the encore, you play the best song last, right? So Wesley wrote the hymn based on Luke 2. That's the opening of the Christmas narrative that we read a lot. It's in your Advent guides. Shepherds are out in the field. They're keeping watch over their flock by night, right? Angels come announcing the birth of Jesus, and they sing praises. Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests. But rather than walking through this portion this morning, which is a part of your Advent guides, I actually want to zoom in on one verse of the hymn that might be a little confusing and kind of walk through it a little bit. So one of the last verses says, hail the heaven-born Prince of Peace, hail the Son of Righteousness, light and life to all he brings, risen with healing in his wings. We like to sing hymns around here. I like to sing hymns for a lot of reasons. Just a couple. One, hymns connect us to those generations of believers that have come before us, right? So a song written before America was founded, right? This song from the 1730s, we get to sing it and join with believers throughout generations that have sung the same words. So we know that we are here in this building that used to be a pet supply store, standing on shoulders in generations of believers that have come before us, right? Another reason is that I was actually reading this article about a month ago. Studies have shown that there are neurological connections, that you can actually remember lyrics to a song that you sing better than you can remember anything from a sermon. So as the music guy, that makes me feel good. As the preacher this morning, that makes me feel a little bit worse, but that's fine. But we know that the songs that we sing actually matter, and they mean something because those words actually make a connection in our hearts and our minds that just hearing the word preached doesn't always, right? But sometimes though, there are different words, different uses of language that can be confusing, but because we've sung them for so long, we either gloss over them or don't think about them. But in particular, so risen with healing in his wings. Are we saying that Jesus has wings? Or I don't, is that what we're saying? Because we're singing about Jesus, risen with healing in his wings. Is that what we're saying? The short answer is no. But that's what we're going to look at this morning and take time to unpack this line a little bit. So this actually comes from Malachi chapter 4, verse 2. So God sent the prophet Malachi to the nation of Israel. Israel has been in exile for a long time, but they've made their way back to the promised land. They made their way back to Jerusalem, but things are still messed up. Things are still just as broken and busted up. And that is primarily because they've been just as unfaithful to God as their ancestors were. So God, throughout the book of Malachi, is providing these warnings, providing instruction on how God's people are to turn to him. But chapter 4, verse 2 has a promise. It says this, "But for you who fear my name, the Son of Righteousness shall rise with healing in his wings." Healing in its wings. "But for you who fear my name, the Son, the S-U-N of righteousness, shall rise with healing in its wings." So the hope-filled promise for the people of Israel is that one day the things that are wrong will be righted, the broken fixed, the hurt healed, like the sun rises to drive away the darkness of night with its light, right? So the full revelation, if we fast forward to the time of Jesus, the full revelation of that promise is in the person Jesus, right? So the rising sun is personified by the risen sun. With me so far? We're moving a little quick. Now, Andrew, I'm saying, you're sure? I'm sure. Who's sure? I am. That's right. That's wonderful news, and it is. But what about this winged Jesus? What about the cartoon Jesus with wings? So there's actually a connection here in the Hebrew that we miss. So in the book of Malachi, the word for wings is called kanaf. Can you say kanaf? It's very easy. So the word for wings is kanaf, and it's actually the same word as like this corner of your garment. So like this corner of your robe is kanaf, and wings are kanaf. So if I had a cape and I was spread out here, like I would look like I have wings, right? So this corner of the garment is called kanaf. It's used in the Old Testament to talk about both. Now follow me here. There are connections in the Torah, in the first 5 books of the Bible, particularly in Numbers, where your robe and these tassels on the corner of your robe are expressions of your faith in the God Yahweh. So people would see these tassels and know that you believe in this God of Israel. So because of these verses in Numbers and the ones in Malachi we just read and others in the Old Testament, Hebrew sages would actually say of the coming Messiah, they would say that when he comes with all this promise to lift the nation up, and he would have so much power that if you could just touch the corner of his garment, if you could touch the kanaf of his garment, you could be healed. And so Hebrew sages are teaching this to people as they come up because of these verses in Malachi. And maybe, just maybe, he would be so powerful, but touching that part, he would be so full of God's Spirit that you could be healed. And so now we turn to Jesus, right? And if you're familiar with the story of Jesus at all, if you're familiar with the Gospels, you may be familiar with this next story that we're going to read. And this actually comes up, this idea of the kanaf, this corner of the robe. So we're getting back to Luke 8. So if you're there from the start of the sermon already, you can get back to there. We'll start in verse 43. So at this point in Luke's account of the gospel, Jesus has been preaching the kingdom of God. He's going town to town. He's performing these signs of miracles, and word's starting to get out about Jesus, right? So there are starting to be these large crowds that follow him from town to town. And then when people in the town realize that Jesus is there, they come out and they have to see him, right? They have to see this Jesus who's performing all of these signs and wonders and miracles. Verse 42, we're not going to read it, but it says people were actually pressed in around him. Another translation says that the crowds were almost crushing him. So it's just wall-to-wall people everywhere. We'll pick up in verse 43. Verse 43 says, "And there was a woman who had a discharge of blood for 12 years. And though she had spent all her living on physicians, she could not be healed by anyone." So there's this woman in this town. She's been hurting for 12 years. If 12 years ago would be 2009, and I don't know if that seems far away or close to you. 2009, I was a senior in high school. Oof. That's a long time ago. But 12 years, she's been hurting every day for 12 years. And it says that she's spent her whole living on physicians. So she's exhausted every avenue available to her, and nothing has worked. And on top of all this, she actually lives in a culture where her particular pain doesn't just affect her physically, but she's counted as unclean. So not only is she physically hurting, she's unable to go to the temple, so she feels cut off from God. And because of how they thought about cleanliness and dirtiness, it's very similar to us. If something that is dirty touches something that is clean, now both things are dirty, right? So she's separated from the people around her. So not only is she hurting physically, not only is she feeling cut off from God, that she's hurting spiritually, but she's cut off from society. She probably couldn't get married because of this, but even if she was married, she would be separated from her husband. She's cut off from everybody. She has nobody. She has nothing. Imagine how she must feel, right? Imagine her pain. It's just two quick lines. How bad must it be for her to be willing to deplete all of her resources? Most likely as a time where she wouldn't have had much, but she depleted all of her resources. She's literally willing to give up all that she has in order to find help. What sort of pain would you have to be in to give up everything, all that you had? No one can help her. Nothing's helped. Every time she tries another option, only to get the same result. No help, no relief. I mean, at what point do you become hopeless? At what point do you just break down altogether? Just pause this morning to consider what this means for this woman, right? So theoretically, she grows up hearing about the Messiah. She hears these Hebrew sages going from time to time talking about the Messiah. When he comes, how he would lift the nation up, how he would make things right, and how he would be so full of the Spirit of God, so full of power, that if you would just touch the corner of his robe, if you would just reach out and touch that kanaf, the corner of his robe, there could be healing. If you would just reach out, there could be healing in his wings. And she hears about Jesus. She hears murmurs and whispers that just Jesus could be the Messiah. He's preaching the kingdom. She hears about people getting healed. Can you imagine? She thought all hope was lost. She thought she was out of options. And then there's a chance, right? There's one chance that maybe, just maybe, this Jesus could heal her. She hears Jesus is going to be coming through. She musters up just enough faith, just enough perseverance to get her hopes up one last time, one last shot. So Jesus is walking through. It's wall-to-wall people. She's supposed to be separated from all these people. She's not supposed to be touching anybody else to make them unclean. But if it's Jesus and there's a chance, we have to push through, right? So she's pushing through these elbows and shoulders. She falls to the ground. She's just within arm's reach, and she reaches out. She reaches out. Verse 44. She came up behind him and touched the fringe of his garment. Where does she touch him? She touches the kanaf, right? The fringe of his garment. And immediately her discharge of blood ceased. Immediately it ceased. 12 years. 12 years. In an instant. Verse 45, Jesus said, "Who was that who touched me?" When all denied it, Peter said, "Master, the crowds surround you and are pressing in on you." But Jesus said, "Someone touched me, for I perceive that power has gone out of me." And when the woman saw that she was not hidden, she came trembling and falling down before him, declared in the presence of all the people why she had touched him and how she had been immediately healed. She knows that she's not supposed to touch something or someone that's clean, especially the Messiah. She's unclean. But the amazing part about Jesus is that it's not like everything else in the world. Everything else in the world, when dirty touches clean, both things are dirty. But with Jesus, when dirty touches clean, both things become clean. Both things become clean. The relief, the joy, her hope realized. Even if it was just an ounce of hope she had left, her hope was realized. She reached out. She reached out. Verse 48, Jesus responds to her. Jesus says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace." And notice what Jesus doesn't say. He doesn't berate her for touching him, even though she's unclean. He doesn't say, "How dare you come to me as you are?" He doesn't say, "Why did you do that?" He doesn't shun her, mock her, dehumanizes her. He says, "Daughter, daughter, your faith has made you well." He sees her. He looks her in the eyes. He sees her pain. And he speaks a word of peace. He speaks a word of healing. He speaks a word of hope. All she had to do was reach out. All she had to do was reach out. Now, I can't imagine what you're going through in this holiday season. Maybe things are good, but maybe you are feeling pain, whether it be physical, emotional, spiritual. The loss you may be experiencing, the loss you have experienced in the past year. I know holiday times are really hard markers for people that have experienced loss. Maybe you're like the woman in the story in Luke 8. You feel unclean, you feel unworthy, you feel shut off from God and shut off from others. Maybe you've been captive to a secret sin that you've been enslaved in for years, and you can't find any relief. Maybe you're in bondage by guilt and shame, and it's just been weighing you down for who knows how long. And maybe you're a husband or a wife or a mom or a dad. You just feel like you've blown it with your family one too many times. And perhaps, like this woman, you've felt like you exhausted all your options. You've done the counseling, you've done the family counseling, you've done the 12-step program. You've tried all these things to find healing, to try and make things right, but nothing seems to work. And it only leaves you feeling hopeless and despair. And the people of Israel that Malachi wrote to, they had been through exile. They had been hopeless and homeless. What they thought would fix them, what they thought would make things right, getting back to Jerusalem didn't. They had gotten back, but it didn't fix them. It didn't fix their families. It didn't fix their country or their nation. But the offered promise to them in Malachi 4 is the same promise offered to you. God says, if you fear my name, if you hope in me, not what you have or don't have, not where you are or aren't, if you trust in me, there's healing for you. If you fear my name, there's peace. Just reach out. Just reach out. That woman in Luke 4 or Luke 8 had been hurting for the majority of her life. No one could help. Nothing has helped. No one knew how to help, or even they didn't even want to. She had exhausted every option and was left with nothing but her pain. She was alone, abandoned by everyone, but the opportunity she had is the same opportunity that we have this morning. Jesus has come. He's within your reach. And this is the beauty of Christmas. This is really it. The Son of Righteousness, the Son of God, has risen into the world. And Jesus' birth, his life, his death, his resurrection are proof that healing has come for each and every one of us. The opportunity is here for you this morning to continually, or for the first time, reach out in faith and say, Jesus, you're the only one that can heal what's broken in me. You're the only one that can make things right. The Prince of Peace, Jesus, his blood shed on the cross, offers us the cleansing and the healing that we actually need. The true healing that we actually need. And still, he is still, just as he was in ages past, he's still in the business of working miracles and healing the broken and healing the hurt. And if not today, if healing doesn't come for you today, the promise still stands that one day, the risen Son will dawn on this world again. He will heal all people fully, finally, and forever. All sickness, all pain, all loneliness, all hopelessness. He'll heal it all if we would just reach out. If we would just reach out. Place our faith in it. Let's pray.